Us this evening from New York City. Hi, Myers. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Liz. Thank you for having me on the show.
So what made you think that this was a good idea? You were running for lieutenant governor, and then all of a sudden, boom, and now you're not. Now you're running for the top job of New York.
That's right, Liz. One of the things that I found as I went across the state, and I spent a lot of time traveling the state. I put over 26,000 miles on my truck and visited all the counties. And from the very beginning, I heard from people saying, you know, Myers, you have our Republican values. You stand for what we stand for. You should run for governor. And at first I thought they were being very polite and encouraging. And so I didn't listen too much to it. But then really as the months have progressed, it became very clear to me that the message that I had about cutting spending, lowering taxes, and creating jobs was the message that people wanted to hear. And furthermore, as I also began to look at my campaign, I had accumulated, to date I've accumulated over 20,000 people on Facebook that follow me. And that's really within 90 days. That's more than Rick Lazio and Steve Levy combined and doubled. So it seems as if my message is really resonating with the voters. And, you know, I'm a traditional conservative. But I think the fact that people are listening to conservative message today confirms what we're seeing in states in Virginia, in Pennsylvania, in New Jersey, that there's been a rightward shift of the electorate.
So your truck,
well,
that's very Scott Brown of you.
Well, I'm not beholden to any. Well, I don't like to compare myself to anybody. I'm my own person. I'm not beholden to any strongmen or any factions or any parts of the party. I'm just an average person. The reason, as you know, I've never held political office before.
Yep.
And I'm running because I think I have that message. But one of the things I found, Liz, and I want to tell you about this, is I conducted a poll of over 500 families across the state. And what I found is that as a social conservative, as a small business person, people voted for me in terms of my composite much more than they voted for Cuomo.
Okay,
in fact,
but
2 to 1.
I looked at that poll. I looked at that poll, and in fact, no one knows who you are. I mean, your name recognition is completely below the radar screen.
That is correct. That's why I'm on this show with you.
Oh,
right?
I see.
If I'm able, well, no, obviously, right? Obviously, nobody knows who I am, right? I haven't been involved in politics. That's why people like what I'm saying.
But they're not hearing what you're saying. What are you? I mean, how are you going to get this message out? How much money are you going to spend, assuming that you're able to get onto the ballot, and where are you going to get that money?
Oh, no, I think I have the 25% to get on the ballot. I've gotten support from over 70% of the counties across New York State.
Okay, but that's his
LG.
That was when you were running for LG,
but
right?
Let's remember that the gubernatorial candidates have 35 and 40%.
Okay, but
so I think that's a strong showing.
Yeah, okay, but I mean, have you spoken to all of these county leaders? I mean, I've spoken to a few of them, and they've said, well, we thought it was great, you know, that we encouraged him to run for lieutenant governor. However, they also said the caveat for them was that if the Republican nominee, assuming that there is one, which there might not be if there's a primary, that person would pick a running mate, and then after that, you know, I'm not so sure that these people would have continued to support you. Now it's a completely different story. You're talking about four guys trying to get on the ballot at the convention. That's a free-for-all.
Well, I don't know if it's a free-for-all. I think what's happening is that people want to have their voice heard, and that, you know, a liberal Republican and a Democrat are not the right candidates to carry that voice. And what I found in the poll is I'm the only Republican that can win.
But the conservatives,
these other people cannot win.
The conservatives are supporting Rick Lazio. So apparently, State Conservative Chairman Mike Long doesn't think Rick Lazio is too liberal to be the nominee. And I don't. What is it about Rick Lazio that's so liberal?
I don't want to question Mike Long's judgment, but I think they jumped the shark on this because my credentials are much more conservative than Rick Lazio's. Now, I know that they believe that they should, you know, control the outcome of the Republican Party, but I'm a Republican. And in this instance, I think that the dog, you know, should wag the tail, not the other way around. And I think because all their commitments,
which one is the
no,
dog?
The Republican Party. The Republican Party is the dog. And you know, all their commitments have been non-binding to date. I think the last thing they want to do is jeopardize their party line. And so I imagine that they'll support whoever the Republican nominee is.
You know,
and my poll also showed that I competed very favorably and very strongly against all the other contenders in a primary.
Okay, let's get to the poll.
Typically it's the activists who vote.
Right. Let's get to the poll in a second, however. But just
Okay.
You know, it's been suggested that you were encouraged to do this by State GOP Chairman Ed Cox because he's not seeing sufficient support for his preferred candidate, Steve Levy. He would be the Democrat, right, turned Republican. And so in order to sort of muddy the waters, if you will, and drive down support for Rick Lazio, he encouraged you to get into the race. Is that true?
That's too Machiavellian. I mean, the truth of the matter is Ed Cox is for the Democrat, Steve Levy. He's always been for the Democrat, Steve Levy. The entire state party is working to get Steve Levy in. They're working to change the rules of the convention so the Wilson-Pakula is easier to achieve. I mean, I have an issue with that. I mean, our state party chairman should be a referee amongst all the candidates, much as our state party the state party chairman of all neighboring states are referees. Now, when Ed Cox came in, he had three priorities. One was to recruit state candidates, the second was to raise money, and the third was to enact the Aristoff reforms, which was the commission I served on. Now, Ed hasn't gotten to those three, and that's unfortunate because it put me in a tough bind. When I looked at the race as LG, I found that there were two people on top of me, one of whom was a Democrat and one was a Republican who couldn't win, that I was in a very tough position.
Okay.
So I hope that at the end of this convention that I can bring people together, Liz, and that we can work together to unite the GOP, that Ed can go back and raise money and put money in the counties. I mean, I think, you know, it's fundamentally not right that every 4 years we have rich men swing into position at the top of the GOP and announce that they're our candidates.
Okay, but isn't that what you are? Wait, hold on. Isn't that what you are? Aren't you actually, I mean, you're a businessman from Westchester County. You have a certain degree of resources, I believe, and are you willing to spend those on this race?
Well, a little of your due diligence is wrong. I'm not from Westchester County. I've lived in Manhattan. That's okay. Since 1980, I like Westchester County. I've lived in Manhattan since 1984. I've self-funded this race to date, and as I indicated to you in an earlier conversation, I've secured funding for this race, this much larger primary and general election race, because of exactly what these polls have indicated, and because national Republicans will support me. Now, one of the things I want to say is that national Republicans have not been in this race. They've written it off because they don't feel that the existing two contenders to win. And as the point that I've made across the state is, very recently, you know, it's never too late to do the right thing.
When you say national Republicans, are you referring to the Republican Governors Association and Haley Barbour? Is that what you're speaking of? Because he has contributed to your campaign, although not a massive amount.
Yeah, I was very pleased that Governor Barbour sent me a check when I had not solicited anything, just as a show of support. And I think that shows, in some small way, that national Republicans care about New York State, and they want to see New York State survive and succeed.
Well,
and they want to see Republican leadership established.
How much money have these national Republicans, who else has actually committed to you, and how much money have they indeed committed to spend on this race? And why would they invest in a person who is unknown, although, as that poll shows, you know, your composite sounds great, but also, why would they invest?
Well, if I can prove that I am that composite, if I can get my name known, as we talked about, then I would have a winning strategy against Andrew Cuomo. And that's what they're interested in.
So
they want to see the state succeed.